know is some of our MSBA members that are connected to the banking field submitted a proposed order in that I think we saw might have just happened yesterday to the governor with, so they've gone to the extent of even drafting the order related to notarization and a couple other smaller matters. So I'm going to jump to the changes in the judiciary. As probably all of you know, state judicial branch, and they supersede, from what I can tell in my reading, they supersede all 13 prior orders that were issued by the branch. So they are the be all and end all of things. So I have just I have one thing I wanted to talk about out of each order. So the first one that was published was PMO SJC number 1. And in that order, one of the important things that it clarified, and just so you know, these are essentially clarifying orders. But one of the things that it clarified, it gave us more direction on, is how we can motion for a hearing that is necessary because of extraordinary or urgent circumstances. I believe it's page 3 of that order. In the middle of the page, lists 4 things that must be found by a judge in order to grant a hearing request. So I just wanted to point your attention to that when you get a chance to review it. If you have any questions, let me know. On order PMO SJC 2, again, a lot of these are just consolidating type orders. There was, let's see, I had it noted here. On page 4, there were some issues that came up, I guess, related to the timing permitted to file an appeal on a case. And bear with me one second. Like I said earlier, we're having construction going on the building, so I'm trying to shield you from the noise as much as I can. There were issues related to when you could file an appeal, and the chief judge tried to clarify what it is that she thought, I guess, were the issues. And essentially, it's this: if you have an appeal, your time has been effectively shortened to make your appeal and you should read what's on page 4 in that it is utilizing the 21-day appeal period for most appeals pursuant to the rules of appellate procedure 2B1 and 2C1. And it describes how your new timeline works for actually filing your appeal. So I think there's a leaning here, and I think Chief Softly was leaning this way when we had the conference, the telephone conference with her last week on the 24th, is that the judicial branch is not trying to affect things that are in place requiring like statute of limitations and issues like appeals from final orders. Then the third order, PMO SJC3, this order addresses some of what was brought up as a concern yesterday about wet signatures. So what this order does on page 3 carrying over to page 4 is it addresses what is acceptable for filing in the court for all the types of cases that are listed in this order. And I spoke with Deputy Chief Judge French this morning regarding the page 4 of this order, and it's his interpretation that what this order is saying is there's a method there by which you can electronically or when you electronically file a pleading or a motion under this order, and you use the digital signature, or you could say the the prose type signature that is called for on page 4, then you can not have to wet sign your pleading or motion related to this order. Okay, I brought to his attention that the request in the little second to last paragraph of having to send a paper copy to opposing counsel seems like it's contrary to where Rule 5 was going, where unless counsel opt out, they're to receive electronic filings from opposing counsel. So he said he's going to bring it to the attention of the judicial branch, and they might have a question answer result on that when Friday comes rolling around. And then the only other thing I just wanted to bring to your attention with order PMO TC1 is essentially the judicial branch has clarified that we will not be having any jury trials in May of 2020. Let's see. So on the business side of things, I know our executive director wanted to give us some updates on what we put on for links on our website.
Thanks, Thad. So for those of you that might be new to this call from yesterday, we have a COVID-19 resource page that we hope you find useful. And just a real quick, we've added some information based on some questions received about businesses. We know a lot of you are smaller businesses concerned about money coming in the door, paying your employees and stuff. We have a lot of articles and quick reference tools that hopefully you can use for your businesses. That a lot of it talks about the Small Business Administration and how to go about getting loans and assistance. And you can see right here all those articles and things right here. Other than that, I don't really have a whole lot to add, Thad, and I know we're getting a little short on time.
Okay, thank you, Angela. I just want to piggyback on that there is going to be a combined CLE of the Maine State Bar Association and that Bernstein Schure's putting on this afternoon at 2 o'clock, and it's going to address some more of those employment-related issues related to the CARES Act, I believe. Let's see, what else do we have on that agenda? So personal side updates. I mentioned yesterday that in the Maine Bar Journal, there's an article in there by Bill Nugent on gratitude. And I mentioned that I was going to start journaling last night, and I did. I was very grateful for being in the state of Maine and also in the community that I live in North Yarmouth. I hope that some of you had a chance to read that article and that you're journaling also. One of the aspects that I spoke of too yesterday regarding how to stay healthy in this environment is I mentioned sleep, exercise, diet, hydration, keeping your relationships up, and your work tempo. And I just wanted to touch base briefly on sleep. there's no doubt that sleep is going to be one of the main sources of keeping you healthy, and that you should work as much as you can on keeping a schedule that's normal. We want y'all to stay healthy. You're part of a big team here, and we care about you. And we can talk about the other components in our next session. Now, that leaves us approximately 2 minutes for questions. Does anyone have questions that we want brought to the judicial branch?
Everybody, if you can unmute your own line. I've muted everybody, but if you have a question, you can unmute yourself. And one more, I do want to bring up the fact that I did receive a question right before this started. The question was, any suggestions on how to maintain the obligation of confidentiality given questions about Zoom now being raised by the Attorney General of New York? We haven't had a chance to look at this yet because it came in right before this, but my hope is we'll address that question tomorrow.
Angela and Thad, this is Marty Walmer. Has there been any word back from the governor's office about the notarizing and witnessing electronically? I'm sorry, I was late to this session, so I don't know if you might have mentioned it at the very beginning.
We did. We don't have any word on it. The other thing that we mentioned too was that there's a group of members that actually put together a proposed order for the governor too that was sent to her yesterday. So we're hoping that that might even spur things along further. So we hope to have something good to report soon on that, Marty.
Great, thank you.
We have 1 more minute. If there are no specific questions that people want to speak about, but you can always email in. I just wanted to recap some of the things that we've moved on to the judicial branch yesterday, and that was the request to open up doing signatures other than wet signatures even further than what was addressed in the order that came out yesterday afternoon. We also had a request about legislation possibly that would change the statute of limitations that are running. We've had requests from last Friday about whether or not there had been any procedures maybe put in place to address safety issues for contact between parents and children and people that maybe supervise parents and children, and visitation schedules, and whether or not they're being essentially addressing those issues. One more thing before we close. There are things that family law attorneys are doing to get their clients divorced. They're using arbitration to address the issues outside of court and still getting people divorced if they're really anxious to do so. I'll end with that, and thank you for joining us. We'll be here tomorrow, 11:15.
If you have questions, be sure to email them to me later today or tomorrow morning. Thank you all.
Thanks, Angela.